Welcome, Women and Wellness Tribe. Dr. Sonia and I are so lucky to have this guest with us today. You guys are in for a massive treat. We have Ben Azadi, who is an FDNP, and he'll tell us all what that is because it's a big mouthful, who's on a mission to help 1 billion people live a healthier lifestyle. He has a best-selling book, and he is also the founder of Keto Camp. You guys can find him on Facebook and YouTube, and he is making a massive, massive change shift in the thoughts and how keto should be done. So thank you so much, Ben, for being with us today. We are honored to have you. And one of the things that I would love, and I know Dr. Sonia would love, is for you to share, how did you get to this point? Why are you on such a mission to help 1 billion people? And why did you create Keto Camp?
Yeah, well, first and foremost, it's an honor to be here. I'm a big fan of the podcast, of you two, and also of Mindy, of course. And we're on this mission together. So excited to chat with both of you. And thank you for that amazing introduction. Yeah, FDNP stands for Functional Diagnostic Nutrition Practitioner. It is a mouthful, a mouthful, and that's my certification. Yeah, so why am I on this mission? Why are we on this mission? Well, my story is, you see me in front of you. I look like a healthy guy. I am a healthy guy, 35 years old, but that wasn't my story growing up. I was overweight growing up. I was actually obese for most of my life. The first 24 years of my life, I weighed 80 pounds heavier than I do today. And my parents immigrated to America from Iran in the 1970s. They had my sister, then they had me in the 1980s. And my mom and my dad were doing the best they can do with what they were given. And my mom was actually an assistant manager at Kentucky Fried Chicken here in Miami Beach and South Beach, actually. And she would bring home fried chicken every single night. And I loved it. It was delicious. It was free food. And I ate it every single night, pretty much every single night. And it manifested into my appearance. So I was just gaining weight and to the point where I was actually obese growing up. And to add to that, I was hanging out with the wrong crowd. I was addicted to things like drugs and video games. I was not living an inspired life. I was not living a life on purpose with my purpose. And I was pretty much lost in life, tiptoeing my way through life, hoping to make it safely to death is what I tell people. And it wasn't until I was 24 years old that I finally woke up. All of my bad habits growing up transferred into my early adulthood. And I was 24 years old. I was now 250 pounds. I was a manager at a packing and shipping store. And my ex-girlfriend at the time, we were together for a little over 3 years. She broke up with me, and rightfully so, because the relationship was really not going anywhere. And I was devastated. I didn't have any kind of mental toughness or anything to work on to deal with it. I didn't have any self-development. I never worked on myself, and it devastated me. And I was so sad and so depressed that I was afraid to actually be in a room by myself, because every time I was in a room by myself, I would think about ways to hurt myself. I would think about ways to end my life. And I actually went on the internet several times to look for ways to end my life, because I was just tired of hurting. I was tired of crying every single day, and I didn't know how I was going to get out of that space. Every time I went to go look for ways to hurt myself, I would think about my mother and what I would leave behind for her. If I did that, it would just devastate her. And I stopped every time I thought about my mother. So thank God I had my mother in my mind, because I don't know what would happen if I didn't have that. So I had a decision to make. I knew that I wasn't going to end my life. I knew that I had to get out of this space. So enter at this point in my life what you see behind me, books. I finally started reading books for the first time in my life. I never read a book, not one book, 24 years old. When I was in school, I just barely got by doing the bare minimum. So I started to pick up books from like Wayne Dyer. I never heard of Wayne Dyer. Who is this guy? And I started reading his books, and I was just like, oh my gosh, this guy, he's been rock bottom. He's shared his stories. And then Bob Proctor and all these authors, and it just opened up an entire new world. And it helped me understand that I'm actually responsible for the results I've gotten in my life. Up until that point, I had that victim mindset. I was blaming my genetics. I was blaming Kentucky Fried Chicken. I was blaming everything except for the person who was responsible, which is myself. So it helped me develop the awareness, number one, to realize that I am the victor of my future, not the victim of my past. And then I finally started focusing on my health. I took responsibility. I focused on my health. 9 months from that decision to focus on my health, I went from 250 pounds to 170 pounds. I went from 34% body fat to 6% body fat. And I finally got a physical six pack, which was something I always wanted to have my entire life. But you know what was more important than that? I tell people I carved out a mental six pack, and I'd take that over a physical six pack any day out of the week. That was back in 2008, 10 years ago or so. And it really started my journey into the health space.
That's such an amazing story. And relating to it, being a child of immigrant parents, I think we also see them stuck in a state of survival. So they're doing everything and anything they can to help us and give the best that they can to us. Like you said, your mom was just doing her best. And there's a certain mindset that gets instilled in children when that's happening. So for you to be able to take that mindset and those beliefs that get stored in our subconscious mind and to be able to shift that within 3 months is amazing. And what I would love to hear, and I'm sure a lot of listeners would like to hear, like, were there challenges in those 9 months? Like, what were some of the blocks that showed up for you that, you know, maybe were there triggers that took you off the path? And how did you bring yourself back?
Yeah, and you said it. I mean, it was my paradigm, my belief system that I had to change, which took time. So what helped me was keeping these books in front of me every single day, and then surrounding myself with people who are going to help me accomplish those goals. And the hardest part throughout the start of this journey was cutting out people from my life who are not going to help me achieve the goal. And I call these people crabs in a bucket. Because when you put crabs in a bucket, you don't have to put a lid on that bucket. If one crab tries to escape, the other crabs will claw at it and drag it back down and keep them down there. So I had people in my life who were crabs, and it was very difficult to acknowledge that and then make the decision to spend less time with them and eventually cut them out of my life because they were contributing to my old way of living. So that was one of the biggest challenges, was limiting my time with them and then eventually cutting the cord and then finding a new set of people, a new set of friends who are actually going to help me accomplish my goals of being healthy and living a life on purpose with my purpose. That took time. There was definitely struggles. There was definitely things people said that got to me. But at the end of the day, I read a book actually that helped me, which was The 5 Regrets of the Dying by Bonnie Ware. And this was a hospice nurse. And Caitlin's smiling. I think she knows the book. So this is a hospice nurse who wrote the book in Australia, and she would interview these people who were dying on their deathbed, and she asked them the same question, which was, what is your top regret? What is your biggest regret? And the number one regret of the dying was not living a life true to their purpose, but living a life of what others expected them to be. And just knowing that so many people had that regret helped me make that decision that I didn't want to have that regret. So that was big for me. And then I'd never worked out in my life. This is the first time I started to do P90X from Beachbody.
I love that program.
Yeah, it's fantastic. The reason I did it too, Sonia, was because I was so ashamed to be at a gym. Like, that was my mindset back then. I didn't want to show up in a gym. I had no idea what I was doing. So I said, hey, I could work out at home.
And Tony's hilarious too.
Tony's hilarious. He always used to say, do your best and forget the rest, right?
Yes, that's right.
And there were really good workouts, and I was sore, and it sucked. You know, it really sucked sometimes because I was really sore. I didn't know how to work out. I was just doing what I can do by following the instructions. And I would go to parties and events, and I was so disciplined. And I tell people it sucked sometimes, you know, and I embraced the suck. And I say all the time, the formula that I used to say is suck, success. You know, I just kept sucking myself forward, embracing the suck, doing the workouts, eating healthy when I didn't feel like it. And it was a marathon. It was not a sprint. And then over time, as I kept associating myself with people who were helping me, I kept the books in front of me. I kept inspirational assets in front of me. Then my paradigm and my subconscious beliefs started to change with it. And it was not easy. There was a lot of stumbling blocks. There was a lot of setbacks, but it's never about the setback. It was always about the get back. And it helped me just keep pushing forward.
Yeah.
I love that. and that book is great. So if anybody hasn't read it, read it, because they also talk about what they regretted was the things that they didn't do and the things that they held themselves back from doing because of fear or because of rejection. And, you know, we all have them. We all deal with those thoughts on a daily basis. And we all, you know, even Dr. Sonia and I have to go through and be like, success.
That's right.
Every once in a while, because not everything comes super easy, and that's okay. But one of the things that I love that you talk about, Ben, is literally the mindset, like that shift that people have to do in order to be successful. Because it's not just enough to take on a new exercise regime or take on a new lifestyle or a new diet plan or take supplements. That's not going to cut it. You really do have to shape and change your thought process behind why you're doing it. So what are some of the tips and tricks that you give people, your clients, when they're really struggling, especially around this time, because the holidays tend to be the hardest for people to not just stay on track, but to not beat themselves up if they maybe do something, eat something, fall off the wagon?
Yeah, great question, because that's something I used to personally struggle with, which was finding a balance between staying disciplined with my health and my nutrition and my workouts, and then enjoying myself with friends and family during the holidays. So there's a fine line there. I think that it's important to, stay disciplined, but also enjoy yourself. So how does that work? Well, that means you do what you can do up until whatever that event is. So I tell my clients, hey, if you have a Thanksgiving dinner, if you have whatever holiday dinner you're going to, then enjoy yourself at that dinner. Have no regrets about it. Be present with your friends and family. But up until that point, you could be really damn good. You could be disciplined. You could practice maybe some intermittent fasting up until that meal. There's some things you can do to help prevent that. And one meal is not going to set somebody back. If they are good most of the time, they'll get the results they want. And actually, what we teach is diet variation, right? It's actually going to help them continue their fat burning. So I could give all the nuts and bolts about, hey, keep your macros here, stay away from these inflammatory fats, eat these healthy fats. But if they don't have the right mindset going into it, it's just not going to work. They might get initial results, but if they don't have the mindset, that foundation, it won't work long term. So it's important to first understand, why do we want to get healthier? Why do we want to lose the weight? Why do we want to have a six pack? Whatever the goal is, once we get very strong and clear on the why, then the how becomes much, much more easier. And you get to accomplish all those goals much more efficiently because you're clear on the why. So setbacks are not really setbacks. Failures are not really failures because your eyes are on the prize. Your eyes are on your why. And everything becomes much more easier when you are strong with the why. So some things I do with my clients is to determine your why. Why do you want to do it? Losing weight is not a good enough why, right? There's always layers behind that. Why do you want to lose weight? Where is it showing up in your life? Is it showing up with your confidence, with your partner, in meetings? Is it showing up with your energy levels, and you can't create the movement you want to create with your business? Like, there's always a reason, a few layers to why that's their reason for wanting to get healthier. Then I have them practice self-love and gratitude, which I believe are two of the biggest healers that we have on planet Earth. They're both free, so they're very much undervalued, and people look at it as woo-woo or whatever it is, but they are so healing to the body. Because if we look at the opposite of self-love and gratitude, we have hatefulness and resentfulness, which is inflammatory to the body. A lot of people have these charges, they have these regrets, they have these things that have happened to them, and I'm not negating that at all. But if we are holding on to it and having hateful thoughts about somebody or something that's happened, we're just reinfecting ourselves, and we're not letting our body heal. And Dr. Will Cole has a brilliant quote who says, you cannot heal a body that you hate. So we have to remove that interference and start practicing love and gratitude. What that looks like for me personally is looking in the mirror every day and looking at myself in the eyes and saying, thank you, I love you. That's something I learned from Abraham Hicks. And also writing down what I'm grateful for. There's always something to be grateful for. So it could be different for every single person, but I would start there, and then you could start learning about the nuts and bolts of keto and fasting.
Absolutely. I think that's really the key to everything, because that's what's going to set your foundation. It's going set your results. And would you agree that the emotions that one feels through the ride is what a lot of times will drive the decisions and will drive the discipline? Because, you know, we can get set for a Thanksgiving dinner or a Christmas dinner. We're doing all the right things. We're disciplined. We get there and then we're like, okay, we can do this diet variation. We can eat this food. Then all of a sudden the guilt comes in. And now all of a sudden the old system of these emotions that are tied to different experiences that maybe felt the same are now showing up in that moment, because we've given those experiences such a astounding meaning, that now this guilt is taking over. So what would you say to somebody that's in that process of dealing with, you know, the emotions that start showing up?
Yeah, a lot of it gets built up, right? It gets built up in our head so the emotions do play a factor into it. A few things. I mean, diet variation, definitely understanding how that works and how it's actually helpful will make a big difference. I mean, the body is meant, all 70 trillion cells are meant for feast famine cycles. We're not meant to just stay on one diet long term. We know that there's no culture in the history of this world that ever stuck with the same diet long term. So just knowing that makes me feel better. And also we want to enjoy ourselves, because what's the point of living, I don't know, past 100 years old? So living longer, but our quality of life is lessened. I mean, we want health span and we want lifespan. So we want to be able to enjoy ourselves. What's the use of being the health freak who have no friends and your family, you don't get along with your family? I mean, it's important we could have it all. We don't have to just have one and not the other. So I think understanding diet variation, understanding that we're meant for feast famine cycles. And then also something else that I think is huge that I want to mention is expecting that you're going to get the results that you want. I know some people say detach expectations, and I'm okay with that, but I also think I use expectation as a powerful tool personally. I expect to get healthy results. I expect to get results with whatever it is. And a story I'd like to share is a story from the Bible with Moses. And Moses was in the desert, and he had all of his followers with him, and he wanted to take these followers into new land, but he wanted to first change their subconscious patterns, their paradigm, their belief system before he brought them into this new land. So they're in the desert for days. There's no rain, there's no water, there's no food. So his followers come up to him and they're like, Moses, we are going to die out here in the desert. There's no food in sight. There's no land in sight. There's nothing for us to survive. And Moses says, you go out there and you pray to your God for some water, for some rain. And the next day, nothing, not a drop. And they walk back to Moses and they say, Moses, God has forsaken us. There's no rain in sight. We are going to die out here. And Moses looks around and he says, where are the ditches? And they say to Moses, what do you mean ditches? And he says, well, if you expected rain, you would have dug the ditches. So the point of the story is, expect that you're going to get the results you want. Maybe you're 3 sizes over than what you want. So start buying clothes that are 3 sizes smaller. Expect that you're going to be fitting into those clothes. So little things like that go a long way. A lot of people do the opposite. They expect that they're not going to get healthy. They expect that this new business venture is going to fail. So let's flip it around and expect great things to happen in our life.
Well, and I think outside of the expectation, you can't just expect something and not do anything about it. You do have to, just like in your story, take the steps in order for those expectations to become reality. Otherwise, nothing's going to change.
That's right. Yeah, God will feed every bird, but he won't put food in their nest. I love that quote.
That's right. Yeah, I love that. And so when looking at health in general, and correct me if I'm wrong, I feel like you were probably set up to do what you're doing your entire life. Your last name, Azadi, does that not mean freedom?
Yeah. Wow.
Yeah.
I'm really impressed that you knew that.
No, I'm Indian. Yeah. It means the same thing.
Yeah, I love it. Yeah, it does
Punjabi
mean
and
freedom.
Urdu too. So I think that freedom that you're giving people from their beliefs, from their mindset, from these old patterns, it's what's going to be driving people forward. And it's like you already set up to go through your journey in order to do that. And I think people, if they listen to this and can relate to that, look back and reflect at their own lives of where they have struggled, and they can use that as fuel to propel them forward to make a difference in their own life first so that they can make a difference in other people's lives. That in itself, looking at that bigger picture, can change someone's mindset, because then it's not just about us. It's like that story that you just shared. It wasn't just about the Moses or like the individual. It was about the entire group that needed to get somewhere. So it's like, you know, you collaborate, you look deep inside, you figure out what's going on with you, so then you could extend that out into the world.
Yeah,
So
beautiful. Yeah, my pleasure, and thank you. I mean, that's what we're all doing together in our group, right? So I love it. You broke it down very well. Exactly.
One of the things that I absolutely love that you mentioned, this was a little while back, is the difference between weight loss and the reason behind it. So whenever I'm working with somebody and I'm taking them through an exercise, I always ask them, what are your goals? Because goals would be weight loss. But then the next question is why? What is your purpose? What is your mission? What are these things going to allow you to do differently? How is your life going to be different? And what I find is when people anchor into that why versus the superficial goals, although the goals are important, just like you said, that's not the reasoning. So is there anything that you have people do to anchor back into their why, their mission, their purpose, the reason behind why the weight loss or the increased mobility or the clearer thinking, why they need to continue the path in order to achieve those goals?
Yeah, I ask them where it's showing up in their life right now. You know, if they say their energy, they want more energy, which is a very common one that I get. I'm sure you get it as well. I just want more energy, Ben. You know, in the afternoon, I'm crashing. All right, how's that showing up? And they'll say, let's for example, well, I get home to my kids and I just have no energy with them. And, you know, I just want them to leave me alone. I just want to rest and get to bed. So what is that doing to your family? Well, it's causing an argument between me and my wife. She's saying I'm not spending enough time with my kids. I feel like I'm not spending enough time with my kids. And where is that going to go if nothing changes in 10 years? What does it look like? And then what does that look like in 20 years? And then they get really present on what it's doing. And then I take them back and I say, okay, let's say you have more energy now. Let's say you get home and you feel great. You're spending an hour, 2 hours with your kids. In 5 years, what does that look like? 15 years. And then I show them that exercise. And that'll anchor both to see which direction they want to go to. And then the decision is theirs. They've seen both futures and now they get to make a choice right there. And that's what I would do.
Decisions are so important. And I always say we can make better decisions when we have better understanding, better knowledge. So you're literally giving people a better understanding of how their decisions are going to have a direct impact on their life. And they get to choose which one they want. And it's only on them at that point as to what they end up with.
That's right.
Do you have like a system for people? Because from your story, what I gathered, you went through a bit of a detox process, like a detoxing the friends that you had that weren't serving you, detoxing the thoughts, detoxing, you know, things that you're watching or the actions that you're taking. And then you kind of moved into figuring out what it is that you want for yourself and then bringing in the pieces that will allow you to move through that and get to that expected goal that somebody has. So do you have like a step-by-step that you walk people through, and how long does that typically take for people to start to see shifts? And when do you see like a moment when you're working with somebody that like, yes, they've finally anchored into that why that's going to propel them forward?
Yeah. So when I'm working with somebody one-on-one, I like it when they're always asking a lot of questions and they're curious. Once they stop asking questions, like, okay, what's going on? I like when they're engaging with me. When they start to actually ask questions that I didn't expect, I love that. Like it's something that I probably don't know too. I love that because I want to, it means they're really researching and investigating and they care about their health. So that right there is a big moment for me when somebody asks me a question that I'm like, wow, that's a really damn good question. I don't know the answer. Let me find out. So that right there is good. And then I also have my Keto Camp Academy, which is just all videos, which is structured as such. So there's a section in there on keto, on fasting, on sleep. But there's also a section, my favorite section, on what's called mental six-pack, which I spoke about earlier. So it's all self-development videos. It's book reviews. It's things that I've learned over the years. And I tell the members, hey, watch 1 or 2 videos from this section every day, because I think motivation doesn't last and inspiration is better. But also sometimes we do need motivation. We need little doses of it. I needed it for myself. And it's like taking a shower. It's required daily, although I don't shower every day. A different story. So motivation and inspiration are important, and it's important to keep it in front of you to feed the beast. So I have that in the academy. So yeah, I do have the structure for the group, and then I have the structure for the one-on-one.
Yeah, amazing.
So Sonia, I'm so intrigued because you said you had some fun questions for Ben.
I do. I have, well, we'll start with this first one. I feel like he's already kind of answered it in our conversation already. It's so, you know, we talked about your name being Azadi and freedom. Is there, if you could choose one thing to give to that individual that's in front of you that's struggling, like a gift that would allow them to propel forward and allow them to see them for who they are, see their self-worth, like what would that gift be?
Yeah, that's a great question. I would say that our thoughts is our greatest power. It has the ability to create magnificence in our life, health, abundance, all the relationships we want. It starts with our thoughts, really. And it has the capability to do the exact opposite, to create disease, to create destructive relationships. And everything that we think, all 60,000 thoughts that we think every single day, about 90%, according to Dr. Joe Dispenza's research, about 90% of them are the same thoughts that we've thought the same day before that. And for most people, they're negative thoughts. They're thoughts that do not serve their health or their future. So I would tell your audience that let's choose a better thought. You know, it's our greatest power. And if you could start observing thoughts as, like, I learned this from Wayne Dyer, like clouds that are just passing by. And let's say it's a negative thought, like, who are you to think you could lose the weight? Or who are you to think that you could be in a relationship with this person? You look at the thought and you say, okay, next, and then you choose a better thought. And if you could get better at closing that gap and having the awareness, it'll change your life. It'll make everything you're doing, whether it's keto, paleo, fat, whatever it is, it'll make it more efficient. It'll upgrade all of your relationships, and you'll love yourself. And you are living with yourself 24 hours a day. So you got to love yourself and choose the thoughts that are going to serve you. And I know that we're all masterpieces. I was just speaking last week at a college here in Miami, a technical college. And I ended with a story about this sculptor in Philadelphia who, it was just a square concrete block. And he had an idea to carve out a masterpiece from this square concrete block. And there was a young boy that saw this sculptor beginning the beginning stages of this creation. And week by week, this young boy would walk by and see this creation being built by this artist. And weeks later, the sculpture was done. It was a Greek god, magnificent Greek god, a masterpiece. And then the young boy walked up to the sculptor and said, "Mister, how did you know that he was in there?" And the sculptor looked down and said, "He was in there the whole time. He's in you. He's in every single person." So we are a masterpiece. You are a masterpiece, Sonia. You are a masterpiece, Caitlin. Every single person listening is a masterpiece. You are a masterpiece because you are a piece of the master. So I would say that, and it starts with the awareness of our thoughts. It'll make all the difference.
I love it.
What would be one tip for somebody who is currently in the shoes that you were in 11 years ago that would shift their mindset to give them the courage, to give them the okay to move forward, to do something different?
I recommend actually listening to Wayne Dyer's Ultimate Library Collection, which is on Audible. Oh my gosh, it's one of the best audios ever. They just compiled his greatest stuff into an audiobook. Listen to that and keep listening to that over and over and over and over. It'll change your life. Keep it in front of you, and then you'll start making better decisions. You'll start to be more aware of your thoughts. You'll start listening to podcasts like this one, the Women in Wellness podcast. You'll start feeding yourself with things that are going to serve you. So I would say that. Go listen to Wayne Dyer's Ultimate Library on Audible. It'll change your life.
Wayne Dyer is amazing.
So good. I saw him live years ago, of course. And
Oh, you lucky
I
Yeah.
lady.
know.
it was
That's
funny.
amazing.
He had his children's books and he was giving them away. He's like, anyone that's pregnant. And at that time, I still didn't know, but I knew inside. And my husband kept encouraging me, go up there. And I was like, no, I'm not showing yet. But it was just, he was such a generous heart. He was just up there giving things away. And it was just such a treat to see him in person.
What a
Yeah.
blessing. Amazing. He's
Such
an
a
amazing guy.
blessing.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Very cool.
absolutely. Yeah. So I have one last question for you, and you kind of answered it already, but I just want to hear it maybe reframed from a bigger picture for you.
Are you there?
Oh, I'm there. I'm here.
You're
Okay.
back.
Yeah.
Did I get
Yeah.
lost? Yeah, I'm back. Okay. I
Everything
said a lot
froze
of
for
great
me.
things.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
I missed it.
Oh, okay.
You just
So
sounded like a robot for a second.
Yeah, that's what I heard. I was like, oh no, she's saying
Oh
something.
no, I'm lost.
I missed it.
Okay, I'm gonna say it again. I was praising you actually, just how amazing you're doing and
Thank
the
you.
amazing following that you have and the influence that you have and the impact that you are already having. But I'm curious to hear what your perception on that is, and if your time came up tomorrow, what impact do you want to leave? What footprint do you want to leave on this world?
Yeah, I'm so grateful for the impact that we all get to make and we've made so far. And I'm also not satisfied with it. So grateful but not satisfied. What impact would I want to leave? Well, the goal, the mission is to inspire 1 billion people. So if I could leave this planet, at least I'm done with this meat suit on this planet, and have inspired 1 billion people to kind of wake up. And what I mean by wake up is have awareness to start thinking for yourself. That's the ultimate goal, to just wake people up, because I was asleep for the first 24 years of my life. Like I said, I was tiptoeing my way through life. If my heart would have stopped beating at 24, it would have been a mere formality. So many people are alive in the definition of their heart is beating, but they're not alive. So I would be really happy and grateful if I was able to inspire 1 billion people to wake up and start living on purpose with their purpose.
Beautiful. Thank you.
I
Yeah,
love
thank
that
you.
you said inspire, because one of the things that I don't ever want to be is an influencer. I don't like that word. I think influencer is very high schooly, like clicky, like you get somebody to like buy a certain brand of clothes, like you influence them to dress a certain way or play a certain sport. But I love the inspire, because inspire means you're giving them the courage to step out and do what they're meant to be, what they're meant to do. And so, you're well on your way. You're making a massive impact. And I love that at the core of it, it's not the diet and the lifestyle, it's the who you are. What are you thinking? Who do you have to become in order to live that life? And that's something that so many people need to hear. And we're just not bombarded with that type of message. We're bombarded with the naysayers and the why we can't. And so thank you so much for being that bright light for everybody to come and see and learn, and you're doing an amazing job.
Yeah, thank you. I received that with open arms. And you know what? You two have been a big influence on me, and Mindy and the whole Dr. Pompa, of course, and our whole group, our whole platinum group. When I saw both of you speak in Boca a few years ago, that was my first conference, and that was the first time I've seen both of you. I was so inspired. I was just so lit up. I was like a kid in Disneyland. Just, oh my God, how can I be involved with what these amazing people are doing? And then I got involved, and I wouldn't be making the impact that I'm making with my community if it wasn't for your mentorship, both of you, Mindy, of course, and your guidance and all the work that you're doing. So we all rise together, and it's much, much more bigger than me or than you. It's just, there's a lot of people hurting out there. We know the stats. You share all about it on this podcast. I've listened to almost every single episode, by the way, of the Women in Wellness podcast. I am an avid fan. So yes, it's our responsibility, our duty, our obligation to get this information out there. And I feel like we are, and let's just keep doing it.
Perfect.
Yeah, keep empowering.
Then tell our listeners how they can find you, follow you, where they can do that. Because guys, women, you're going to want to listen to him. He brings on some amazing guests too, and gives some really great information. So Ben, where can they find you?
Yeah, thank you. My podcast, absolutely. So they're listening to this, so they listen to podcasts. So Keto Camp Podcast, that's camp with the K, would be a great resource. And then my YouTube channel, it's youtube.com/Keto Camp, or just type in Keto Camp on YouTube. Those would be two great resources. I put out a lot of content on there, and I'd love for you to check it out.
I'll make sure to put that in the write-up for everybody to follow too, to make it easy. Thank you so much for being with us today, Ben. I really appreciate it. You gave a ton of amazing information and mindset. That is something we all on a daily basis need to work on.
Absolutely.
Such a
It was my pleasure. Thank you too. I had fun.
Thank you.